Hello! Today we're going to make stuffed peppers. This is one of those dishes that I make different nearly every single time, but the basic ingredients are always there. So depending on whether or not I want it to be vegetarian or I want to have meat in it, that's one of the big options. If I want it to be vegetarian, I just remove this pound of ground beef. But today, this is what I have on hand, and that's what I'm going to make. So we're going to start off by making sure our peppers actually fit into the dish that we're going to use. So depending on the size of the peppers at the market, I put those in the dish first. That's how I decide how much I'm going to make. These are fairly big. Sometimes I can actually get 6 in here, but these are fairly big, and they will actually take in as much of the filling that I'm going to make, which is going to consist of 1 pound of 90-10 ground beef. That means there's less fat in this, which I'm okay with because I don't want this to be all greasy. I've got about 6 or 7 cloves of garlic, a cup of already cooked rice. I don't care what rice it is, just that it's already cooked. And if some of it falls out, you can put it right back in there. We're going to add a touch of sweetness with dates. These are really big dates, but I'm going to show you, we're going to pit them and chop them up, and we'll decide on whether or not we use all 3. I may only use 2 because these are fairly big. I've got a lot of feta. This is my salt for the dish. So I use a lot of feta. There's 4 ounces of feta there. You can adjust that to your personal taste, and you'll be able to taste the filling before you put it into the peppers, because we cook the filling ahead of time before we put this into the oven. So you're not going to wonder what it tastes like at the end of the day. We've got oregano and parsley. Again, I'm putting these in to taste, but at least for the parsley, at least a tablespoon, probably 2. And for the oregano, probably, I'd say half a tablespoon up to a full tablespoon, depending. I've got some tomatoes, which I'm going to process just so that I can get the pulp of them and put that into my filling for acidity. And then I'm also going to use some Kalamata olive spread that I have. You can use fresh olives and just chop them up. So this is going to add some brininess. This is going to add some saltiness, salty briny. We've got some sweetness coming from our dates, actually a lot of sweetness, and the acidic and sweetness from our ripe tomatoes. So this is going to be one of those dishes that you can make on your own, and as you make it, try adding and changing the ingredients to what you like. We're also going to use trusty olive oil. You know, you've seen that before. And you can also add pepper to taste, but I don't find that I need pepper for this particular dish, because I have a lot of flavor coming from elsewhere. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first, we're going to brown the meat. We're going to season it. And then we're going to ultimately put it into a bowl, add the rest of the ingredients, and go from there. So we're going to take all of our meat, just put it right in, and we're going to brown this completely. You don't want anything to be raw. So let's flip that over. All right, so I break it apart in sections. And we're going to brown this all the way through. Any excess fat that might come out of this, depending on how much we have, I'll incorporate some of it, but not all of it, because I don't want this to be greasy. Now, if you can't already tell, I actually started with a piece of meat that wasn't fully defrosted. So what I'm doing is taking off pieces from the outside. It's mostly defrosted. And it's okay to use defrosted meat, but you just want to make sure it's not like a rock. And if I can do this with my spoon, it's not very frozen. But we want it all to cook evenly. So you don't have to have a high heat. I have a medium heat on here right now. Let's see, break that up. Flip it over. And get the part that's already been defrosted by the heat of the pan. So while we're letting that fully cook, okay, like I said, it's going to be completely brown. We're going to work on putting the rest of our ingredients in our bowl. So I'm just going to shift this over here. And we'll keep checking on our meat as we go. So I'm going to add our rice right into the bowl. We are going to get our garlic pressed. Because some of these are small, we can do more than one at the same time. Now, I know I'm not actually cooking the garlic. I like that it'll cook when it's in the oven. And I'm going to put it in a 350 degree oven for about 30 minutes. So it'll cook in there, but I like how pungent it can be. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can saute this with your ground beef once it's mostly cooked off. Okay, so once the beef is mostly cooked off, you could add this in if you'd like to. So we go ahead, and now I'm using a different spoon. It's nice and clean. And as we're doing this, we're going to keep checking back on our beef. All right, so we're just giving it a moment here. I'm going to take some of this Kalamata olives. It's about, this is 1 teaspoon, excuse me. So I'm doing about 2.5 teaspoons of that. I'm going to taste all of this. So I'm going to leave this off to the side in case I want some more. Okay. We're going to put in some oregano. Just going to put a little bit here, but I'm mostly going to season the meat in just a moment. And we'll put a little bit of the parsley in for right now. So I'm just basically seasoning the rice, because we're gonna add these again. All right, we're gonna put our feta in here and break that up. All right, so we can just, using our spoon, it's a big hunk of feta. I'm just gonna break it up a little bit, because as we toss everything together later, it'll keep breaking up. All right, so I'm just gonna mix this part together. Again, I said with the tomato, with our feta, it's going to break up a bit more. So I'm just going to give this a quick stir. And we're going to put this off to the side. So we have our dates. If you haven't dealt with a date before, there's where it's actually been connected to the tree. See that right there, as opposed to the other end. And in here, there's a pit, and we need to get that out. It's not hard to do. Before we do that, we're going to check on our meat. And let's give this a good stir and break that up, because we want our meat to be something we can stir in with our rice mixture. Okay, it's almost there. This doesn't take very long. And I love that about recipes, that you can just make it and it doesn't take forever to get ready. All right, so we come back here to our dates. So dates are very sticky, but see, I can just pull this apart. And you see, this is my pit. All right. Each one of these has a pit. And part of why I open this up and take a look is just to make sure that, there's nothing interesting going on in there. Because sometimes, like with anything, you might get something that's not at the highest quality. If you're curious, cut a piece taste it. The outside is a little bit leathery, but the inside's going to be nice and soft and so sweet. I'm going to put this one off to the side. I'm just going to cut this one up and add this to our mixture. So I'm cutting it into strips, and you can see how sticky it is. Get that off there. And I'm just going to try and cut this into small pieces, because it's not going to break up any more than what you cut it. All right, so you see it's all sticking together, but when I put it in, because it is cut up, they won't be all stuck together, but you want to cut those pieces up. All right, so we'll just put this into our, just be careful, into our mix. Get it off your knife, off your fingers. And there we have it. All right, next stop, we're going to go ahead and actually get our tomatoes pureed. So we're going to prep for that. All right, so we're going, before we get started on our tomatoes, let's just do one last check here on our meat, because I think we're ready. Yep, there's no more brown. You just want to make sure any large pieces, you use your spoon to break that up. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off and turn the overhead fan off too. And I'm just going to put this in the bowl and just break it up just a little bit more. And you notice there's hardly any fat. That's because I used 90-20. If there was any fat running off when I did this, I would drain that off. So we'll move over here. And we're just going to shift this over. Get our bowl. And we're going to add in our meat. A little bit of fat adds flavor, so we're not going to complain about that because we want our food to be flavorful. So if you want, you can give that a stir now. Break up some of those date pieces so they're not all in one big clump. You see our feta, we got some nice good chunky pieces in there. All right, so everything's fully cooked in here at this point. You could eat this as is, but there's our dates. We're going to break that up. All right, so we'll move that off to the side. And we'll come back to our tomatoes here. Now, when it comes to using your food processor, yes, it can cut these up. But the reality is, if you give them just 1 or 2 cuts before you place them into the processor, it makes the job a lot easier. It'll go faster. So I'm adding moisture because we are going to, aside from the flavor, fresh tomato, who can beat that? Aside from the flavor, we need a little bit of moisture for this while we go ahead and put it into the oven. Now, we're at a point where once we do this, we could let that filling cool and then stuff our tomatoes, our peppers. I'm doing it with peppers today, but you can certainly do this with tomatoes. The only difference if you did that would be you'd have to core the tomatoes and make sure that everybody has you've taken out all of the pulp. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. Can leave it a little bit chunky too, which is what I've done here. Just move this over. Bring our bowl and pour this in. Again, just those fresh tomatoes really do add a beautiful aroma and flavor here. All right, so now I'm going to finish seasoning it with oregano and parsley. And yes, I'm doing that by eye, but it's not quite a tablespoon in all total. But remember, again, you can always taste this. But with my parsley, I'm definitely going to add a lot more. So that's more along the lines of probably a tablespoon and a half. All right, so mix that up. And if you have fresh, go ahead and use fresh. I just don't happen to have fresh right now. And that's our filling. It's nice and moist. And at this point, you can taste it so you can see whether or not you want to add some more of anything. So I'm going to taste it with a little bit of feta. That's perfect. It's perfect. And I can still taste the olives, which I love. I'm really happy right now. All right, so let's get our peppers prepped, and then, like I said, you can cook it right off, or you can put it in the fridge and cook it later in the day. Okay, so prepping your peppers is very easy. We're going to keep the lids, so you're going to want to be able to cut down through so that you save that lid. And then I use another bowl just to get some of these guys out. And then use your knife to separate the inner membrane just a little bit, and then use your hand to twist that out. There you go. You want to do that for each one, and then I put the lid back on so I know where it lives. And some are not that connected, so I don't always use my knife on the sides. Just get all the seeds out. And then I put them right in my pan, so it keeps my cutting board nice and clean. And these are coming apart nicely. And the whole pepper is eaten when the time comes, except for the stem. So make sure you've washed these before you do this step. Cut one more. These yellow ones and orange ones tend to have more membrane in there, so we'll just get that all out. Okay. Oops, some more here. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just, who wants to have a bunch of seeds in their mouth? So if you leave one or two, it's not the end of the world. All right. And last one. Okay. So we can get that out of the way. Get our knife out of the way. Bring our peppers closer. So my little trick, if you will, to remembering where all the lids go, I just kind of strategically place them near where they live. So, do what works for you, but that's what I do. And then I'm not worried if any of the filling falls out into the pan, but you want to get as much of it. You want to fill these evenly and put as much filling as you can inside of them. And the bonus is any leftover filling, while you can cook it right in the open spaces, have it cook alongside, like that bit that just fell on me. No big deal. You can freeze the rest of this and use it another time. So you'll have the stuffing ready to go All you have to do is get your peppers or your tomatoes and put them in. Fill them up. It's a nice big piece of feta for that one. Everybody should get a big piece of feta. So I'm going to fish some of those out right now where I see them. Because it's going to mostly hold its shape, but it will melt a little bit. Get all of these filled up. Be very, very generous. You can see we have a lot of filling. There's no need to worry about whether or not you have enough. You'll have plenty. And it's a good way to use up some leftover rice. And other pantry staples that you might just have and you're like, what should I do with that? You can make this with, you can take some zucchinis too, and you can chop those up and add them in here. I would saute them first to get rid of some of the moisture. You can add mushrooms to this if you want. I like to keep it like this though. All right. I have pressed down on all of these. I think we're at capacity. Now, if you do this with tomatoes, just keep in mind the size of your tomatoes is going to make a difference to how much you can actually put in there. The key is you don't want to break the tomato when you're scooping stuff out, so be careful about that. Make these all heaping because there isn't enough, I would say, to keep some on the side. So we're just going to make these kind of heapy. There we go. Just the smell alone, and I have already tasted it, as you know, is making me very happy right now. All right, so because I've strategically placed all of my little lids, I can add those on. I'm pressing them down just slightly. And, I'm Greek. I can't help it. I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top of all of these. It's going to fall down. It'll help blister some of these guys as they cook. So this is going to go into a 350 degree oven for about 30 minutes. Remember, everything is cooked but our pepper, and I want to cook the pepper. So we're going to check it in 30 minutes. The pepper should be soft and really, again, to taste. So I like it like cooked through. So I want it to be soft, but if you want them to have a little bit more crunch, you can do that because you're going to eat the whole thing. So into the oven we go. Our 30 minutes are done, and we've pulled our peppers out of the oven. You can see there's some liquid at the bottom, which is great for getting picked up with some nice crusty bread, but you don't have to do that either. So you may want to take a top off and see what's going on the inside. But all you have to do is grab your pepper, put it on your plate. Now, if you're serving this as a side dish, by all means, put it as a side dish. Or if it's just family style, just put this on the table. Why not? I want you to try this because you're going to find that there are multiple possibilities of what you can put in here and make this your own. Remember, the stem, not something you're going to eat, but you can eat all of the pepper. So just cut this up, eat it whole, enjoy, because that right there, that is delicious.